Hello, welcome to our first segment of Ask the Workplace Therapist. And I am very, very excited to say that I heard from Rowena today and we have our first query. So, Rowena, what has come through?
Yes, exciting, in a good way. So the question today is, hi, I work at an IT company, and yes, the hours are long, and there's a lot going on at any one time. Our leaders talk a lot about caring for employees and wanting to hear our feedback, but I do not see any tangible signs of welcoming feedback. Shouldn't we have anonymous ways of sharing feedback? I'm just unsure how I will be treated if I speak the truth. So, what should I do?
Mm,
Great question, Kate. I'll
yes,
let you
indeed,
run with this
indeed.
first.
Okay, all right. Just as a reminder, these little segments we are sharing our thoughts. There's no right or wrong answer, and we, of course, are not the experts on your workplace or your workplace situation. Um, However, okay, so this topic of feedback is such a big one, and I can concur with our anonymous sender that often people say they want to hear feedback, but it's really hard to provide that, and it's actually terrifying to provide feedback up the line to our bosses sometimes. Um, on the topic of anonymous feedback, what are my thoughts? I think it's really important to have avenues of feedback that suit all different types of people and the way that we communicate, what
Yeah.
we're comfortable with. I think always we should be striving to creating cultures where we can have uncomfortable conversations with each other, because that is what psychological safety is. Um, and of course, there are always going to be some people who are far more comfortable providing feedback anonymously. The thing I would say about anonymous feedback, and just where I've seen it fall over a few times, is if it's not set up properly, it can be used as a bit of a sort of a keyboard warrior venting sort of session. And I have worked with leaders who have lost sleep over problems that are being put through anonymously, but because they're anonymous, they don't know how to fix it. They don't know how big the problem is. They don't even know how to sort of bring it up and discuss it. So I think this is not actually answering the person's question. Is that I think anonymous feedback is great to have as an option if there are there's a set framework around it, so it's like, what's the issue, what's the impact on you, what are some suggestions, what are your requests? So it forces people to think more than just there, I hate this, rah rah rah. And in terms of being a new employee and hearing about feedback but not actually getting any evidence of it, have you got any thoughts around that, Rowena? Like, I'm wondering how the person could start to suss out if that is in fact a lived value or if it's just a statement. Um, Maybe they could ask for
Well,
feedback themselves, like they could bring up in a meeting, I'm new and I'm just wondering if people would be willing to give me some feedback on how they think I'm going. That could be a safe way to test it.
yes, I think it's important to have, as you said, a couple of different ways in which to receive feedback. But one of the good thing about being in a workplace environment is that you're getting feedback all the time. So you don't have to just rely on the proper avenues that you're putting out there. You just have to, as a manager and a leader, also just be um, what we call active listening. You just have to be staying in touch and paying attention to all the verbal and non-verbal cues that you can pick up, because this is very rich environment and you can definitely catch things, but you have to be wanting to see certain things, being open to seeing all these different ways that people are expressing themselves. And I think this is where the non-verbal cues really come into play. The silence, the longer pause, and I guess the negative around that, I guess, is that sometimes we can read too much into things as well. You know, why did she take 2 seconds too long for this? And so pay attention to the active listening, but also just use the opportunity to clarify. Ask the question, double check, reconfirm. I think temperature checks are really useful in that regard, and also a good way for you to make sure that you've gotten the message intended. The other thing I also thought of is that we really need to step into the shoes of our employees. And sometimes it's difficult to kind of, flip flop and move between, role of the manager, role of an employee. But as a manager, I think it's on us to kind of step into those shoes from time to time so that we can really see how the other person is experiencing it, even if we can't fully. Just trying to will definitely open up and give you some things to think about.
And I think, and something I always quote to leaders is, I think it was an Australian study, but the conclusion was that if an employer says to an employee, I'd like to give you some feedback, what goes on internally for that employee is identical to if the manager is standing there with a large stick threatening to belt them over their head with it.
Yeah.
So the word itself just can strike up fear in people, but feedback isn't a negative word. It just seems to have negative connotations in our culture. So normalizing feedback by giving lots of appreciative feedback and, sort of, and asking for what do you think went well in that, or how did we do well? I think as a leader, you can set the tone really well. You can ask for opposing views, like this is my thoughts, but know that I am one person and I can be very one-eyed. I really would like to hear other opinions of this, or other takes on this matter. I think as an employee, it is harder, and it's important to sort of acknowledge how difficult that could be. I'm just thinking back to the question, and I wonder if the person could, maybe speak one-on-one if they're comfortable to their manager and say it's really exciting to hear about the culture that's, really welcomes feedback and everything. In my old work, we had an anonymous feedback mechanism. I'm just wondering what are the preferred mechanisms here, to sort of just open it up a little bit and get a little bit more clarity around how this is meant to be happening. That I think they mentioned that they felt that leaders were
they felt unsure about how consequences, I guess. And this is where I think not just your most senior executive leaders, but just middle managers as well, we all have a role to play in making sure we're creating systems and processes where we can allow for these sort of things to bubble up and not wait for something to get too far down the road before you discover something. It's pretty bad at that point. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I would even say it's not, I mean, so much falls on the managers and the leaders, and they have to do this, they have to do that, like everybody sets the tone in a team. And some people, regardless of where they sit in the hierarchy, may be more comfortable being outspoken and more comfortable taking interpersonal risks.
Yes.
So that can be a huge gift for everyone in the team, if, to sort of, they can be like the canary in the gold mine, like what happens to them? No, only joking. But I think it's a great question because, as is often the case, there's no exact, precise answer, but they've noticed the words, they haven't seen the actions, and so seeking clarity on, okay, so what are the actions? What are the ways that you like to receive feedback, or what are the, where could I ask for feedback? Could be a good starting point.
Absolutely. So, well, this is a good opportunity to tell everybody that they are welcome to send us their questions anonymously, and we will share the link to that in the comments section.
Yeah, that's right. And as you can see, we aren't don't have a magic pill yet. We might find one along the way. But I think these are all topics that we need to talk about more and more. So it's
Absolutely.
great to get the conversation started. Thank you. Thanks, Rowena. Lovely.
Thank you.